When to define the relationship, and we can say DTR because that's the word on the street.
Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. I'm happy to welcome Sandy Weiner back to Second Act, the dating coach and relationship expert and host of Last First Date Radio. Sandy, thanks for staying over.
My pleasure.
Well, we just finished what I thought was a great conversation about communication, about what do especially women need to understand to better communicate, how, men and women communicate differently and why a lot of times that's an issue for us. And I want to just get right into today's topic about a very specific conversation that's difficult for us. I know it was for me, and that is that dreaded conversation about defining your relationship. You've been dating a few weeks, months, maybe even a year. But that conversation never took place and you're wondering where you really stand. Talk to me about that. Why is that important?
Again, it's vulnerable. It's hard for people to bring up because we're so afraid somebody's going to be on a different page. But if you don't bring it up and you are on different pages, then you're going to find out after you're really invested and there's this, what they call a sunk cost. You've already spent so much time with this person and the heartache is so much worse when you have no definition.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick example of a client who really liked this guy and they were sleeping together. They had not defined the relationship. And I said, you have to have this conversation. Even though you feel like it's exclusive, you have to have this conversation. So she had the first part, which is, I'm not sleeping with anyone else. Are you? And he said, no, of course not. Okay. Second part was closing down the profiles of their dating apps. She had had that conversation. Are you still talking to people? And you can't take any of this for granted. We have to have a really clear conversation about what we want and what we need. So that's why it's so important. And we often don't even know what we want and need, or we're afraid to ask for it.
Yeah. I know that before I heard conversations like this, I think it might have actually been on a Second Act interview. Yeah, that you actually have to define it, that don't assume that you're exclusive. I think that's a big mistake that women make. Do you think men make those mistakes? What do you think about that?
I think everybody makes these mistakes. I have definitely talked to men who have also not defined or kind of known in their gut that the relationship was not what they wanted, but they hung around anyway because they thought maybe they'll be the person who's going to save them, fix them, be the one. And this is the trap that I think everybody can fall into. And that's why clarity and direct conversations are so, so important.
Well, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about being exclusive. I mean, maybe you don't want to be exclusive and you want to make sure that the guy understands so I guess it goes both ways. But I guess the point we're drilling home is we need to define the relationship if it's something that's going on. So when and how do you do it, Sandy?
I just want to talk about what you just said, which is there are many ways that we can be in relationship. And certainly as we get older, we have lots of different ways of looking at them. And you and I spoke about living apart together, which is something that you're doing. And many people our age are doing that. So they're not looking for marriage. Maybe they're looking for exclusivity, but it looks different. So having that direct conversation is important. Maybe you're just interested in casual dating. Maybe you're recently out of a relationship and you just want to kind of get out there and have some experience. And maybe you're interested in friends with benefits. If you're both on the same page, all of these relationships can work. If you're on two different pages, don't live in the place of wishful thinking. And when to define the relationship, and we can say DTR because that's the word on the street. When to DTR. So there are a couple ways to know when to define it. One is that you have known this person for some time. And again, it can be a different amount of time for each person. Maybe you've been on 6 dates and you feel like, you know what, I really want to spend my time focusing on this person and nobody else. I've been in that position where I've actually had that conversation with somebody not knowing how he'd respond.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to also know how you're going to respond based on their response. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You want to also really check in with yourself. We often think there's some timeline that other people have defined for you. So by 3 months, you should be exclusive or whatever some expert is saying. I say, like, dump all that and really look at you and this person and how do you both feel about each other at this time. You also want to look for signs that they are on the same page as you. And you can tell by their consistency, their investment of time and energy, whether they make you a priority. That will show you signs that they want exclusivity. If they're super casual and they're dating other people, you'll have a sense of that too. That will be pretty obvious. And yeah, I mean, that's basically when you feel it, speak it.
Yeah. I want to follow up on one point you made because it's so important, I think. Don't let other people define that for you. Because I certainly had my growth. Oh, like this is what you should do, and this is what you should do, and should. And especially for me, like you said, yes, we're doing living apart together, and it's like, well, shouldn't you get married? No. So yeah, don't let other people define this process for you. Now, how do you do it? Is there a right or wrong way to have these conversations?
Yeah, and I want to just say one more thing about what you just said, which is self-trust is probably the most important thing to learn throughout the dating process and the relationship process. We have learned to just ignore our gut, ignore our intuition, just trust what the experts say, trust what you read in a book. Those people don't know you, they don't know your life story, they don't know what works for you. And so, even in my Facebook group, Your Last First Date, I tell people don't advise support because you don't know much about this person and their situation. How can you tell them run away from a guy because of one experience that she's shared? So trust yourself. And now we'll get to how to DTR.
That's funny.
So first, I want you to really look inside yourself and how are you feeling when you're with this person? Did that person make you happy? Do you feel anxious? And often we're in relationships where we feel really good when we're together, but when we're apart, we feel really anxious and unsure and not trusting. And so pay attention to those signs. Do you feel like your relationship isn't moving? And often we get into these stagnant places where maybe you go out once a week and it's going on for months and months and it never escalates to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are ways to really check in with yourself first and say, well, what do I want? And that's the next part is like, what do I want? What do I want with this person here? Do I want to take it to the next level? Do I want to be exclusive? Do I want something casual? And then script the conversation. I want you to like really think about what you want to say. And again, no, we need to talk is the worst thing you can say. So start with, here's what you like about that person. I'm really enjoying spending time with you. I love going out with you. It's been so much fun over these past few months, weeks, whatever. And if you do want to get exclusive with that person, you can say, I've decided that I don't want to see anybody else. I want to focus on getting to know you better. And I remember when I thought about having these conversations, and it felt like I had to commit to a lifetime with this person in this conversation. I think that's why so many people avoid it because we don't know the future. We're just saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to date three other people while I'm seeing you. You've come out on top. And so I want to just see you and then define what that looks like. So if that looks like we spend weekends together, maybe we're sleeping at each other's houses and we're going on vacations together. Be really clear and then ask what you want.
Yeah. You say listen and ask open ended questions. Give us an example of that.
Yeah, so it's not again a monologue, it's a dialogue as in all the communication tips I give, it's back and forth. So you're stating what you want, and then you open it up for a conversation. How do you feel about that? Tell me what you think. What's been on your mind? What would you like to do? Tell me more. And we often are just like, we're so scared to have this conversation that we're not even opening it up. And then the last part of this is to be ready for any response
Mm.
because maybe they are on the same page. And when I brought this up with the guy I was dating, he was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I'm closing down everything." He had been seeing somebody else. He canceled a date he was supposed to have the next day. And he was just waiting for a sign from me. Now, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes they say, "You know what? That's not what I'm looking for." And so you have to know what are you going to do next? What's your bottom line? Are you going to walk away because you want something they don't want? Be really clear. Like if you stay in that relationship hoping that person's going to change, it's going to be really frustrating.
Yep.
And the last part I want to say is that we don't just define the relationship once, we do it over and over again. And especially if you're in a long-term relationship, how's it going for you? Where are you now? Has anything changed? Is there anything you need from me? What do I need from you? Keeping those lines of communication open, really, that's the key to having a really happy, successful partnership.
Yeah. Well, again, two important points is know what you want. Because I know, again, sometimes I can want something just because I'm not getting it, but do I really want it? and I'm wondering if anybody out there listening feels like that. And once I realized that changed a lot of things too. And then yes, you have to understand what could happen and what will you do then. I wanted to reemphasize that as well, because yeah, that can be difficult.
Yeah, but the more you can take a stand for you and what's important to you, the less you're going to give over your power to somebody else to make decisions about how you live your life.
Yeah.
And yes, relationships are collaborative, but you've got to know yourself first and be open, be honest. This person could be amazing in every single way except what they want in what they're looking for.
Right.
And it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just hold out in this place of magical thinking. Really be honest with yourself first and then just say, "I wish you well." I mean, one of my clients just had an old fling reconnect with her, and she's in a relationship. And he said, I'm just checking in. If you're single, I'd love to connect. And if you're in a relationship, I wish you well. And she wrote back, it was like too little, too late. He was not ready when she was, and it really was hurtful, but she walked away and found somebody else.
Yeah.
And so she's taking the high road, wishing him well and telling him she has found somebody else. We don't want to just sit and pine and wait for somebody. Live your life.
Right, exactly. Well, again, important conversation. I think lots of people can identify with it. I know we get comments on this, throughout our videos. Sandy, is there anything else you want to add on this topic before we end?
Just to remember that relationships are a living thing. They are always morphing and changing, and we don't always grow together. We sometimes do and sometimes don't. So the more open and honest you can be with each other, the better all your relationships will be.
Yeah, good advice. Well, Sandy, we will link to all of your information on your website. You have tons of resources, including your books and your courses. Incidentally, Sandy is also the author of Becoming a Woman of Value. There it is. How to thrive in life and love. And ultimately, that's what we all want. So, Sandy, thank you again so much for your time. Again, I will link to all of your information, to your podcast, to your books, to your courses. You always have something happening. Oh, and to your Facebook group. That's really cool too. I think a lot of our women, especially, will like to look into that. And we'll see you again soon on Second Act TV. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.